Okay, perfect. So since both of you are not speaking up, so I will quickly talk about what we discussed in the last class. Is my voice clear to both of you, or is it cracking in between? Okay, it's clear, says Aisha. Perfect. We also have Iram joining in. Good evening, Iram. How are you doing?
Good evening, sir.
Okay, perfect. So at least someone is picking up. Okay, so since you can speak up, I was about to do the recap myself because Aisha and Parker are not able to use the microphone. So Iram, would you like to quickly talk about self-incompatibility and what is the concept of monoecious and dioecious? Just this two, so that everyone comes to the same page and we can start from here.
Yes, sir, just a minute.
Yeah, whenever you are ready, okay? So we will look forward to finish this chapter in today's class and move on to summarizing both plant and animal reproduction, and then we'll go to evolution, right? Okay, Iram, whenever you are ready. Okay.
Sir.
Yeah.
So actually, I don't have my book right now with me, so I'll try my best to recall what we studied in the last year. I want you to assist me in that.
Yes, no worries. Like just self-incompatibility and what is the why is it important, and monoecious and dioecious. That's it. Yeah. So what do we mean by
Yeah.
self-incompatibility in plants?
Self-incompatibility, it is a phenomena that prohibits self-fertilization or inbreeding.
Right. So plants have evolved this mechanism so that they can avoid self-fertilization as much as possible and can promote cross-pollination or cross-fertilization, right? And
Yes,
why
yes.
is that? What is the benefit? If someone asks you the very easy question, why will a plant promote cross-pollination and avoid self-pollination? Simply to get variation. So sexual reproduction is more fruitful if there are variations, right? So if they are
Yes.
producing flowers, they are already investing energy as a system. So plants are producing flowers, plants are producing ovule and pollens. But if they end up doing self-pollination, then it is not the true essence of a sexual reproduction, right? It is still a sexual
Yes.
reproduction because fertilization and fusion of gametes is happening, but biologically there is no benefit that the plant is getting. It's same like plants that it can reproduce through spores or through vegetative propagation. It's just like that. There's no evolutionary advantage in that. So a plant would like to avoid self-pollination and promote cross-pollination so that variations can evolve among the projects, right? And that helps any living organism to survive better in the environment when there is variations, genetic variations in the offspring. Correct? Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. And then what is monoecious, dioecious, monosexual, bisexual concept in plants?
Monoecious is one-bodied organism, one-bodied, I think, flower, and they have monoecious
When you
have
say one,
bias.
when you say one-bodied organism, that's not a true, a good answer. So when we say, it is the literal meaning of the word. So when I teach you, I tell you the literal meaning of the word because that helps. When you say one body, two body, it doesn't make any sense. So you have to say monoecious are those plants which contain both sex organs in the same body. To understand, I tell you that there is just one body in the species, so that you can make sense of it, and you can understand that if there is only one body in a species, then obviously both the sexes have to be present on that single body. But when you write an exam, do not just write one body, two body, because that does not explain anything, right? What do you mean by one body, two body? Someone can come, and can there be trioecious organisms for that matter, three body?
Um,
No, right? So that's why. So just saying monobody or one body, two body is not a good answer if you're writing it in exam. So write that monoecious are organisms where both the sex organs are present in the same organism on the same body. Yeah. And then opposite is dioecious, where both the sex organs are present in different individuals or different bodies, right? Perfect. And what is the term monosexual and bisexual referred to in plants? Monosexual and bisexual, Aisha and Parker. I guess Iram will have to answer that because Aisha and Parker, because can't use their microphones.
The bisexual flowers have both sexes, male and female reproductive parts present within them, and
Same
in
flower, within the same flower.
yeah, within the
So
same
the
flower.
word bisexual and monosexual in case of plants are used to explain the flower, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mariam is saying, what is us bisexual? I didn't understand. Us means you're talking about, oh, I think is, okay. So I thought you're talking about the human species. Okay, my bad. Both sexes in one body is bisexual. Yes, right. So in this case, it has to be a flower. So both sex organs present in the same flower is bisexual flower. And if a plant has bisexual flowers, then that plant itself will be a monoecious plant. Correct? I think that concept we discussed in detail and clarity. Anyone has any doubts in these concepts? Aisha, Iram, or Parker? If no one has any doubt, then give me a thumbs up and we'll move forward. We also talked about, okay, cool. So we talked about post-fertilization events, double fertilization, triple fusion, syngamy, etc. So in today's class, we'll quickly talk about seeds and what is present inside the seed, and then two concepts, and we'll try to finish. So when we talk about seed, what do you understand by a seed? What is a seed? So let's pay attention here. Yeah. So if we start with post-fertilization, what happens? So post-fertilization, there are three things that are produced. First thing, which happens due to triple fusion, is endosperm. So endosperm is produced, right? When one male nuclei fuses with two polar nuclei, correct? Is that correct, everyone? So I'll write it. It's a result of triple fusion. And the second thing that is produced is the embryo itself, which is result of fertilization event. These two things together, when they are formed, are a result of double fertilization, right? And both of these two things, endosperm and embryo, are present in the seed, right? So seed is the final product of sexual reproduction in angiosperms. Final product of sexual reproduction in angiosperms. Okay. So talking first about the endosperm, you already know things about it. You know how it is produced. But what is an endosperm? It is what contains nutrition, right? So there is an obvious logic that, see, if endosperm is present to provide nutrition to the developing embryo, right? So which will develop first, the embryo or the endosperm? Tell me. If you are invited to have food somewhere, if you go to your school mess or canteen to eat something, excuse me. So before, food should be present before you arrive there, or first you arrive there and then the food comes? What makes more sense? That the food comes first, right? So in this case also, endosperm development happens first. So the first point about it is that it precedes, or it develops before, embryo development. Is that clear, everyone? Why? Because it provides nutrition. Excuse me. And how is the endosperm tissue formed? So the primary endosperm cell continuously keeps dividing. So you know that the primary endosperm cell itself is triploid, and it keeps dividing to form a triploid endosperm tissue. Okay. So triploid endosperm tissue. And this comes from the primary endosperm cells. And these cells of this tissue are filled with lots and lots of protein, starch, which is basically the reserved food material. Okay. Which is used, it is secreted slowly when the embryo is developing inside the seed. Okay. So before germination starts, there is a living thing inside the seed. So sometimes, have you noticed that we can store some seeds for quite some time, and after that, when we sow these seeds in the soil, a live plant comes out, right? Germination takes place, correct? So for that whole duration, where that embryo was inside the seed, but the seed was not inside the soil, the embryo was living, right? There was a living thing, there was a living system surviving inside that seed. If it would have died, then the seed will not be germinating. So what keeps it living? What keeps it giving nutrition to the embryo? This endosperm tissue. Okay. Now, how it develops, let's go to the schematic. So write down, just write in a flow chart. So you have, sorry, starts with you have primary endosperm cell, which divides through mitosis, okay, to form triploid endosperm tissue, right? So basically, this primary endosperm cell contains the primary endosperm nucleus, right? And this is known as pen. So this pen, how it from primary endosperm cell, it becomes a triploid tissue, because this primary endosperm nucleus first undergoes successive karyokinesis. Karyokinesis is just nuclear division. So this is also known as pre-nuclear division. Only nucleus keeps dividing. Is it clear? At this stage, the endosperm is known as, so let me erase this thing here first. And let's go like this. So at this stage, you call this endosperm as pre-nuclear endosperm. After this, the cell walls start forming, and each nucleus gets a cell normally. But there are some plants in which this free endosperm nucleus or free nuclear endosperm stage is stalled. It is not followed by cytokinesis. So there is no cell. And all this nucleus just keep floating in a fluid medium. Okay. And do you know one such example of this kind of endosperm? It's very famous. It's also asked in entrances. It's a kind of a GK question now, GK question of biology. Any example where the endosperm is present inside the seed as a free nuclear endosperm? It does not undergo cytokinesis and there is no cell, only nucleus floating. Yes, Iran?
Coconut.
Coconut, yes. So the coconut water is nothing but pre-nuclear endosperm. Okay, those are millions and millions of nucleus floating, and that's why coconut water is one of the most nutritious plant source fluid that one can have, right? So when you drink coconut water, what you are drinking is millions and millions of nucleus. Okay, and these nucleus will of course produce lots of protein and nutritional stuff. So that's why coconut water is nutritious. But write down, the coconut water is a free nuclear endosperm. The coconut water is a free nuclear endosperm. And Parker has a question, which is a very, very good question. What about the white part in the coconut? Yes. So that white part is where the cellular development starts. So in a tender coconut, in a green coconut, which is not which we call it. So do you know that the whole coconut is nothing but a seed? Coconut is a seed, right? So when you have a coconut water from a tender coconut, the green part is not the seed. That's the fruit. But inside, in a ripened coconut, when you remove all the husk, you see a very hard shell. That is the seed. Inside the seed, as the coconut develops, when it is tender, it has just liquid, which is pre-nuclear endosperm. Over time, cell starts forming, and that white part, write down, the white part is called kernel. So the white part or kernel is the cellular endosperm. The fluid part is the free nuclear endosperm, and the white part is the cellular endosperm. So it's successive karyokinesis, free nuclear division to form free nuclear endosperm, and it is in fluid form. And one example here is coconut water. Okay, just don't say coconut, because coconut itself is not endosperm, it's a seed. And then the kernel, which is the white part, is the cellular endosperm. Okay. Now, there are so the whole function of endosperm is to provide nutrition. That's clear. Now, based on this function, there are two types of seeds that we get out of plants. Now, in one kind of seed, this endosperm is completely used, okay, by the embryo. So the embryo eats up all the endosperm, okay, and you do not see any endosperm left in the seed, okay, before the seed matures. And in some cases, there is a lot of endosperm left even after the seed is mature and ready. Okay, so even in that case, where a lot of endosperm is remaining when the seed is mature, it does not mean that the seed will not use it. The seed will, of course, use it, because the embryo will always use endosperm, but then it uses during germination. Okay, so seeds, or write down, in some plants, the endosperm is completely eaten up or utilized. In some plants, the endosperm is completely utilized or eaten up. And examples are, you must have seen beans. All the beans use up the endosperm. That's why when the endosperm is gone, endosperm is mostly starch, then these plants are rich sources of protein. So beans is a good source of protein. In some cases, it's pea and groundnut. These plants use up all the endosperm before the seed matures. The embryo eats up all the endosperm. By embryo, write down. By the embryo, not by the plant. Sorry. Okay. As well as in other cases where the endosperm is present, even when the seed matures, is Coconut is one. It's always there either in the liquid form or as the cellular endosperm. The white part is always there. So either coconut, and there are a plant called castor. You know about castor seeds?
Yes.
Yeah. So in those, the endosperm is available even after seed maturation. And you can write what when it's available, what it does. It is used up during germination. Okay. So castor and coconut. So it's used up during germination. Sorry?
Coffee is also there, no?
Coffee is also there. Yeah. So they use that endosperm during germination. Okay. Now, is endosperm clear to all of you? Everyone, thumbs up if it's clear. We have Rabia also who joined. Good evening, Rabia. How are you?
Good evening, sir. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Great. You can hear me right clearly. If my voice
Yes,
cracks,
sir.
please let me know. And please ask questions and doubts if you have. So any doubts with endosperm?
No, sir, no doubt.
Okay, perfect. So next, let's talk about the embryo. So for whom the hero, for whom the whole thing is happening. So we know that embryo develops in the embryo sac, and in that sac, it develops towards the micropylar end, because you remember now that towards the micropylar end only the egg cell is present. So the fusion to produce embryo happens at the micropylar end and not at the chelazal end. What is present at the chelazal end? Just a revision quickly. In a embryo sac, what is present at the chelazal end? The antipodal cells. Okay. Do you remember that? The antipodal cells are present in the chelazal end. Now, for the embryo, write down, it develops at the micropylar end. Develops at the micropylar end. Okay. And you know, as I told you, see, let's apply some logic. So the double fertilization is happening at the same time. Yes or no? Right? People? Yes, no, anyone? Should.
Yes.
Now, if at the same time you have a endosperm cell and at the same time you have a zygote, but I told you that endosperm develops before the embryo. So this means that there is only one way to do this. The zygote, after it is formed by the fusion of egg cell and the male nuclei, it does not divide. Unlike like in an animal system or in a human, where the moment it becomes a zygote, then it starts, dividing to form two cell and so on. So it does not divide. It waits till the endosperm is formed to some extent. It also does not wait for the endosperm to form completely. But let's say there is one cell in each, one cell which is zygote and one cell which is the primary endosperm cell. Okay, so the primary endosperm cell will start dividing first and the zygote will stay as it is. When the primary endosperm cell has divided enough to form, let's say 500, 1000 cells, it has become a tissue now, then zygote will start dividing, because during division, it will need energy, nutrition, so that it waits just like we wait before we start, before we sit on the dining table. we wait for the food to be ready. It's not like we sit at the dining table and the food starts to be prepared at the same time, right? Do you understand the concept? It's logical,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So in plants, the zygote waits. So you can write down that the zygote divides only after the primary endosperm cell has divided. The primary endosperm cell has divided multiple times to form an endosperm tissue. Okay. Now, in a normal embryo, there is two things, okay, which is so there are two kind of seeds which I will talk about in the next segment, monocot and dicot. And accordingly, there are two kinds of embryo. Embryo which is present in a monocot seed and an embryo which is present in a dicot seed. Okay. And in case of, let's go with dicot first. In case of a dicotyledon, dicotyledon embryo, there's an axis present. Axis of embryo is present. Dicotyledon simply means that this kind of embryo will have two cotyledons, 1 and 2. Okay. And then from these two cotyledons will come out a thing called plumule. Okay. Here. And it will go down. And it will form a, if I label something like this kind of a structure where these two are cotyledons. And then this junction, that this tissue is called plumule, which forms the shoot system. This at the very tip is called the cap of the radicle, or in short, later on it will be known as the root cap. Okay. And you can realize that what is this? This is radical tissue that gives rise to root. And in between the plumule and radicle, this region is called hypocotyle. I'll tell you why it's called hypo. Remember, the word hypo is always associated with something which is below, right? Hypocotyle, below the, because if you see, it is below the cotyledonous region, the cotyle region. So it's called hypocotyle. It's below the cotyle, right? If I go in this, am I audible, people?
Yes, sir.
If we go in this direction, so first comes the cotyledons. If I just make the embryo straight, and below it comes the hypocotyle. So that's why it's named as hypocotyle region. So this is for a dicot. In case of a monocot embryo, there is no axis. Okay. Because there's only one cotyledon. So looks something like, if I show you from the side, it is let's say it looks something like this. Any shape you can make. All you have to remember is in the shape, there is a region that is called which is this region, which lines up the whole embryo. It's called epiblast. Simply, the word epi means the covering. So there has to be a covering, epidermis, just like epidermis, epiblast. At one end, so it's divided into two halves. At one side is your radical tissue. All is present inside. So you cannot differentiate between the shape, but you know that the tissue, which is radical, is present at one side. And similarly, the tissue which is called plumule will be present on the other side. Or you call in this case as shoot apex. So this forms the shoot. I'm deleting this line. And then covering the plumule is something in monocots which is called as coleoptile. Coleoptile. So coleoptile is protective covering for the plumule. And similarly, for the radical, we have a protective covering which is called coleorhiza. Okay. And between the radical and coleorhiza, I forgot to make it, but let's make a tip here. This dark thing. You have the root tip. Okay. And there is no such axis. I'm just drawing it for the sake of drawing. And somewhere between radical and plumule, there will be a tissue called scutellum. Okay, scutellum. And scutellum is the single cotyledon that we name. So it is present in, it is, you can write scutellum as the name given to the single cotyledon, which is on the lateral side. So this side, which let's try to make it, let me highlight it. So this side, you will see that the endosperm is situated on a lateral side. There's an axis. In the other case, the cotyledons is present on both sides from where the plumule comes out. This whole structure comes out. But in this case, it is, it is the single cotyledon present laterally. Present lateral to the embryo. Is it clear, everyone? So the embryo does not have an axis of its own, but everything is present in the same structure, a single cotyledon structure. Does it make sense? But you can find some similarities. See, some similarities which are there is, there will always be a radical and a plumule. There will always be a root cap. In here, there are protective coverings called coleoptile and coleorhiza. Let me write this more clearly. It's very. Okay, coleoptile. It's clear, everyone? So if you
Yes,
write, if you ask the functions, epiblast is covering the whole embryo, and also the scutellum. Scutellum is a single cotyledon present lateral to the embryo in a monocot seed. Plumule and radicle are same for both. And coleorrhizia and coleoptile are tissues which are present ahead of plumule and radicle. And again, their function is both nutrition and protection. Okay. Perfect. Now let's talk about seed. So endosperm and embryo together are present in this structure called seed. So seed is the final product of sexual reproduction in plants. And what is special about seed? The special thing about seed is in angiosperms, it is produced inside fruits. It is formed inside fruits, right? And there are three major structures that every seed does have. One is the seed coat, then the cotyledon, which should be present within the seed, and a embryo axis or embryo present. So seed has, first is a seed coat. Every seed will have a seed coat, right? And what is the function of a seed coat? Seed coat, simple. A seed coat is a hard structure which is present to protect the seed. Single what do you say? Objective of a seed coat is protection. But a seed coat does much more than that. It also signals the seed or the embryo which is inside that a favorable condition is now and the embryo should start germinating. So when all the seeds that we see and touch are very hard structures, right? Plant seeds are mostly hard structures, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, so that hardness is because of the seed coat. Now this seed coat has one very special ability. Whenever it is present in like it is there in the presence of moisture, water, and a favorable temperature, it imbibes water and gets swollen up. And when it imbibes water and gets swollen up, there are small cracks that are produced inside in that seed coat, and those cracks allow the water and signaling molecules to go to the embryo inside the seed. Unless and until this will happen, unless and until there is a break or there is a crack in the seed coat not by physical forces. So if you just crack a seed coat by like hitting it with a hammer, the seed will not start germinating. So that crack has to come by the seed coat soaking water, cracking, and then molecules going inside. Unless and until that happens, a seed will not germinate. Okay, so that's very important. So write down seed coat for protection. Inside the seed coat, we know that there has to be endosperm present in the form of cotyledons, whether it's a monocot seed or a dicot seed. And then there has to be a embryo inside, right? Now, let me also tell you quickly, there are two terms given in most of the books saying that there are non-albuminous seeds, okay, and there are X-albuminous seeds. Okay, so both the words non-albuminous or X-albuminous means that there are no endosperm left. We talked about these kind of seeds like pea, groundnut. They are called non-albuminous seeds. So if I say that a seed is albumin, it means that it has endosperm. It has retained some part of endosperm during the embryo development. So that when the seed is ready and developed, still it has some endosperm in it. Okay. So those are seeds retain endosperm. Post embryo development. Okay, so in a mature seed also you will find endosperm. That's albuminous seed. The second category is non-albuminous or X-albuminous. Okay, so no endosperm left in a mature seed. Is that clear? I'm just giving you these terms so that you should know it. Okay.
So
Yeah.
I did not copy that sentence. Can you show please?
Oh, sorry. Is it fine now?
Yes.
Yeah. I think I don't know if it's important for you, but just know that sometimes there is a third condition. Do you remember? All of you remember the tissue nucellus? Nucellus tissue in the development of the gynoecium, or what should we call the megasporangium? Remember megasporangium development? There was a tissue called nucellus. What was that? Yes, Parker remembers. Parker, what was nucellus? And what was the function of nucellus?
Provides nutrition.
To what? Shall I just scroll up a bit? Let's see. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
To embryo.
Yeah, to the developing embryo. Let me go up, even more up. Yes. Do you see somewhere in the megasporangium tissue called nucellus? And I told you in many ways you can think of it as a parallel to tapetum. Tapetum was there when microsporangium was developing, and even tapetal cells even secrete sporopollenin to form the exine of the pollen. So they are in direct contact with the pollen mother cell. Here, the nucellus is in direct contact with the embryo sac itself, right? And this nucellus is a food reserve. So basically ovules become seed. So this nucellus is not present, not retained in a mature seed. But some seeds retain nucellus. Some cells of nucellus are retained in some seeds. And you can write down those kind of seeds are called perispermic seeds, or that tissue is called perisperm, because it is not endosperm. It cannot be endosperm because endosperm is coming from the fusion of polar nuclei, which is inside the embryo sac with the male gamete. So endosperm is inside the embryo sac, but nucellus is outside the embryo sac. So when nucellus is retained, but remember, endosperm is also a nutritional tissue and nucellus is also a nutritional tissue. So, but these are two different origins of tissue. Nucellus is diploid, endosperm is triploid. But if nucellus is retained by any seed, we will not call it as endosperm of the seed. We will call it as perisperm of the seed. Does that make sense? Peri means boundary, at the boundary. And you can see that nucellus is present at the boundary of the embryo sac, outside of the embryo sac. So we call it perisperm. So if they ask you what is a perisperm, write down. In some seeds, the remnants of nucellus is present. In some seeds, the remnants or leftover of nucellus tissue is present. This persistent nucellus. This persistent nucellus is called perisperm in the seeds. Okay, perisperm, not endosperm. But perisperm is also nutritional. Perisperm is diploid. Endosperm is triploid. Make sense, everyone? Just so that you understand this thing. Okay. Okay. Now, yes, you have a question.
No, sir.
You have a question? I thought that you unmute and you were asking something.
No, sir.
No? Okay, cool. So write down another question. What is seed dormancy? What is seed dormancy? Okay, and before seed dormancy, one more question that I saw is about the seed coat. Okay, where did the seed coat? Yeah, here. About the seed coat, just write it down. So what forms the seed coat? If we go back to that megasporangium diagram, can you tell me what do you think is this diagram? Can you tell me what do you think is the best candidate to make a seed coat? Which kind of tissue? So we know that nucellus forms perisperm. Embryo sac, inside the embryo sac is endosperm and embryo. What do you think is the best candidate to form a seed coat in future?
Outer and inner integuments.
Yes, integuments become seed coat. So these two structures, outer integument and inner integuments, are basically future seed coats. Make sense to you or not? So they get hardened and form the seed coat. And in every seed, especially in diploid seeds, you will find a very small pore that remains at one side. That is this micropyle, small opening. So when the seed is produced through this micropyle, water starts seeping inside, and this integument starts absorbing it, which is now the seed coat. It starts absorbing it, and then the cracks develop, and the next processes happen for the seed germination. Yeah, so just wanted to tell you this. Now let's come back to dormancy. Okay, write down what is seed dormancy. So sometimes people don't understand seed dormancy properly. When I say seed dormancy, what do we mean? Is it just when the seed is not germinating, or is it something more? So dormancy is not associated with the whole seed or every structure of seed. It is more associated with embryo. Okay, so we know that seed needs certain cues to germinate, like a water moisture content should increase. That's why many seeds, if you just keep it in wet cotton, it will start germinating, right? This is how we make our sprouts, correct? You just keep your moong and chana in some wet cotton cloth, it will start sprouting. Have you seen that happening, Iram, Aisha, Mariam, and Rabia? We don't
Yes.
need soil for that, because that is the cue. Moisture content increasing, water around it, and lower temperature is a cue for seed to germinate. Okay, so if that happens, the seed is not dormant, the seed is active metabolically, and it just needs favorable environment. Sometimes the embryo enters a state of metabolic inactivity. Write down. The embryo present inside the seed enters the state of developmental inactivity enters the state of developmental inactivity. This state is known as dormancy. This state is known as dormancy. Write down the next sentence in continuity, full stop, next sentence. The dormant period only ends. The dormant period only ends when favorable conditions, when the seed is exposed to favorable conditions. The dormant state only ends when the seed is exposed to favorable conditions. And when I say favorable conditions, I mean high moisture, suitable temperature, which is mostly low temperature, and availability of oxygen. Okay, so mostly when seeds are sowed inside the soil, they do not get proper oxygen unless water is there. So water brings oxygen with it because oxygen can dissolve in water. Do you understand, everyone? Make sense? So high oxygen, more water, and less temperature. These are favorable conditions. Okay, now talking about the food, the fruit, which is basically the food produced by the plant. We already talked about two type of fruits: false fruits and true fruits. Correct, everyone? Anyone has any doubts with false fruits and true fruits? If no one has a doubt, please give a thumbs up. Everyone understands true fruit and false fruit. Perfect. Now I'm going to tell you about another category of fruits. So whether a fruit is a true fruit or a false fruit, till it is a fruit, it means that it was a product of fertilization, like fruit developed after sexual reproduction and fertilization. So the only difference is in some fruits, it was not the ovary that ripened, it was some other tissue like a thalamus, a peduncle, a pericarp that ripened, and hence the fruit is a false fruit. Okay. But there is also a case in which the fruit is produced not as a result of fertilization. Okay, so the fruit develops without fertilization. There is no sexual reproduction event happening, no pollen tube formation, no male nucleus fusing with female nucleus. So basically, but still you get fruits, a pulpy structure that is edible and store food. So in that case, write down, in some plant species, in some plant species, fruits can develop without fertilization. Without fertilization. These fruits develop without fertilization. These fruits are known as parthenocarpic fruits. Parthenocarpic fruits. These are the fruits that develop without fertilization. Now the question is, and how do they develop? Right? You must be thinking, how do they develop then? And what is the tissue that starts ripening and why does it start ripening? So a short answer is that in these cases, you remember plant growth hormones, PGA? You studied plant growth hormones in class 11. Remember that? Auxin, gibberellin, ethylene.
No, sir.
You have not studied plant growth hormones?
The
How is
chapter
it
was
possible? Oh, the chapter was removed. Okay. Anyway, so just remember that there are certain hormones, and if these hormones, they are called plant growth regulators, PGRs. Okay, and these plant growth regulators are used by plant to produce a fruit. Like basically, there will be a structure that will start ripening and become fruit, but there is no fertilization. So there is no sexual reproduction involved, no variation, nothing. So one such example is banana. You've seen banana? Banana is a fruit, right? Banana. Okay, so in case of banana, parthenocarpy can be induced very easily by application of growth hormones. And because now it is very obvious, you can give me many more examples in some time. If sexual reproduction is not happening, will there be an embryo?
no.
No. If sexual reproduction is not happening, will there be an endosperm? No, right? Because endosperm also needs male nucleus. Remember, polar nuclei plus a male nucleus. Embryo also requires a male nucleus. Egg cell plus a male nucleus. So there is no pollination, no sexual reproduction, so no male nucleus. So even if you have female structures, you will not produce a viable seed because seed is a final product of sexual reproduction. So all the fruits that are developed through parthenocarpy or can be artificially developed through plant growth hormones, which is mimicking parthenocarpy, are seedless. So parthenocarpic fruits are seedless fruits. Okay, write down. Parthenocarpic fruits are seedless fruits. Now, can you think of other seedless fruits? No? Yes? What? People, seedless fruits, come on. Okay, let me give you this as a homework. So you have to, someone is writing in the chat, no. What do you mean by no? You can't think of any seedless fruit? Okay. Find more parthenocarpic fruits commonly available.
The grapes.
Yes. Seedless grapes, right? You know, grapes are actually seeded. The grapes, the real grapes that people, anyone has seedless grapes? grapes here? Grapes with seeds?
Your voice is cracking.
No, no, no. Few has grape. Basically, only. Sorry, my voice is cracking. Okay, is my voice okay now? People, is my voice better? It's better.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Parker is saying that she was saying no for the another answer. Okay, cool, Parker, no worries. Yeah, okay, so you have to find two things now. I'm giving you some common homework. Find some more parthenocarpic fruits commonly available and why some grapes are seeded versus some are seedless. You have to find this answer. And it's very interesting. Just go and figure it out, okay? Cool. Everyone has noted this down. Please note this down. This is important. You will not find the answer in your textbook. So you might have to go to other sources of information on internet. But remember, not every source of information on internet is reliable. So also apply your logic that whether what this source is saying, does it make sense to you? If it makes sense to you, then bring it in the next class as your argument or as your answer, and we will talk about it. Okay. Perfect. I only saw Iram's thumbs up. What about others? Not interested? Okay, I saw thumbs up now. Now there are two more concepts in this chapter that you should understand. Remember, I told you biology is always the science of exceptions. So there are two concepts that whatever we have studied till now is about the standard concept of pollination, sexual reproduction, making an embryo, a seed and a fruit. Okay. But apart from this very standard routine of sexual reproduction in plants, there is also something known as apomixis. And since it is something, a deviation from the standard method, more questions come on this. So apomixis, and another concept is polyembryony. Now, I'm sure that if I have to guess which one you understand, even without going forward, polyembryony makes like the word itself is more clear to you, right? Anyone can tell me what does the word poly means?
Many multiple embryos.
Yeah, multiple, and embryony means there'll be multiple embryos. Now, under what condition multiple embryos, you can see multiple embryos? Any way under which you can see multiple embryos? Okay, we'll come back to it. Let's first go to apomixis. Now, what is apomixis? I told you that seeds are the final product of sexual reproduction. That is the normal standard method. But some plants have evolved a very beautiful evolutionary mechanism to produce seeds, but without reproduction, without fertilization. Okay, so you can write down few angiosperm species and many of these species are, if you remember, Asteraceae and grass families. Asteraceae and and Graciaceae. You remember this family? Brassicaceae, Astraceae, Liliaceae. This part was also removed from class 11th. Morphology of flowering plant,
So
something
we
like
only
that.
have Fabiaceae. We
You
didn't
did
have the
Fabiaceae.
rest of
Okay, but you know
yes.
that there are classes, right? Fabiaceae, you know. Okay, perfect. So Fabaceae, Liliaceae, Astraceae, all these. So Astraceae family, I'm writing it here. Astraceae family and the grass family. Okay, these two have evolved a special mechanism. Write down. These plants have evolved a special mechanism to produce seeds without fertilization. To produce seeds without fertilization. Okay. This mechanism is called apomixis. Now, if there is no fertilization, it cannot be sexual reproduction, right? So apomixis is basically a type of asexual reproduction because these seeds can germinate into a new plant. So they are viable seeds. But the difference is there can never be a variation when you grow plants through these seeds. Okay, they will exactly be like their parents because the parent, a single parent, produced these seeds without fertilization or sexual reproduction. So apomixis is a type of asexual reproduction, but in the as a procedure, it mimics or it copies or it looks like a sexual reproduction. So you will see seeds and you will think that, oh, this plant produces seeds. So it is doing sexual reproduction. But after proper investigation and research, you will realize, oh, these seeds are not produced from two different, from the fusion of two different gametes, because it does not contain different alleles for the same gene. It contains the same gene in two copies from the same parent. So these seeds are basically asexual reproduction, result of asexual reproduction, but they mimic sexual reproduction. Okay, so they are called apomictic seeds. Now the question is, how can apomixis happen? Is apomixis clear? In short, if I write, so it is seed production without sexual reproduction, right? Without fertilization. And seed is also diploid like the normal seed, but it does not have two genomes coming from two parents. It just has one genome in two copies. Now, how does this happen? There are ways. So how can it happen? First way, mechanism, write down. How it happens is the egg cell here. Remember, the egg cell should be haploid, right? So that a male nucleus can come and fuse. Right, everyone? In
Yes.
this case, the egg cell is diploid. Okay. And if it is diploid, clearly it was not formed through meiosis. So egg cell is formed through mitosis and is diploid. And this diploid egg cell directly develops into embryo. Okay. Is it clear? So this is one way. Second way is that remember the nucellus again, nucellar cells. So in the second mechanism, the nucellar cells or the cells of the nucellus, which are surrounding the embryo sac, cells divide and enters or protrudes into the embryo sac like a tumor. Okay, it divides and enters into the wall of the embryo sac and helps the egg cell. So it is like a pseudo fusion. Help the egg cell to develop into embryo. So in this case, what's happening is the nucellar cell is giving a false signal, because this is exactly how male nucleus also enters, right? By protruding inside the embryo sac. Is it clear? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So here it's not the male nucleus, but egg cell will think, oh, something is protruding inside the embryo sac. I think it is male nucleus, and pretty much, but it's the nucleus from the nucellus, and it is the same plant's genome. So again, it's asexual reproduction because it just develops. So the nucellar cell is diploid and it develops into embryo. Okay. In this case, what happens? So these nucellar cells, there can be multiple nucellar cells, right? Not just one. Male nucleus was just one, actually two, but one goes to the egg and the other goes to the polar nuclei. So in case of male nucleus, in case of real fertilization, from one event of fertilization, how many embryos can be formed? Just one, right? Because you also have to form endosperm. You cannot not make endosperm and just make two embryos. That cannot happen. So if a real sexual reproduction is happening in plants, each embryo sac will give rise to one embryo. But in this case, because these nucellar cells divide abruptly and protrude into the embryo sac, and they develop into embryo because they are diploid. So there can be multiple embryos. Do you see? Do you understand now?
Yes, sir.
So each ovule will contain multiple embryos in this case, where the nucellar cell protrudes inside the embryo sac and develops into an embryo. So in this case, the occurrence of more than one embryo in a single seed, I'm not talking about multiple seeds, in the single seed, when more than one embryo is present, so this give rise to polyembryony. Make sense? You can write down the occurrence or the presence of more than one embryo in a single seed. The occurrence or presence of more than one embryo in a single seed is called polyembryony. And now you understand how this happens. So the mechanism is nucellar cells divide abruptly, mitotically, protrudes into the embryo sac, and develops as an embryo. Okay, and in this case, there can be multiple of embryos in the same embryo sac, which means in the same ovule. And that condition is called polyembryonic. Okay. And this happens in many citrus plants like lime, lemon, orange, all these family, the citrus family. And it also happens in mango. Mango has a single seed, but sometimes the single seed can contain multiple embryos. So if any one of you has ever witnessed, I have witnessed one case where you just sow one mango seed in the ground, but comes out 2 or 3 or 4 saplings of mango. Has it happened with any one of you? No? Anyways, but this is possible. So in case of mango and citrus, polyembryony can take place. Okay, so I think with this concept, I will also teach you one more concept, but that will take in evolution as we go forward. When we talk when we'll talk about the evolution of plants. Okay, so when we will talk about the evolution of plants, we will talk about how the early plants were like and how angiosperms, about which this whole chapter is, they started dominating the planet and they became the most dominating plant species. So let's hold it for that portion. But any doubts till now? Apomixis, polyembryony, any other concept that we have studied till now? Anyone has any doubt? No. Okay. So go back and revise this whole chapter. You have tomorrow's day. So tomorrow, revise this whole chapter from your textbook. Just read it like a story. Okay. I think there won't be more than 15 to 20 pages in this. So read all those pages, see the diagram, and figure out if there is any part, any nook corner of this chapter that you don't understand. And from Wednesday, I'm going to start evolution. And your concepts of animal genetics and plant reproduction both have to be strong to understand evolution. And let me just give you this quick recap of it. Evolution is one of the most misunderstood concepts in science, in biology. Okay, many people think that evolution is just a theory. It's the story that scientists came up with because they were not able to answer many questions, that why we have organisms like we have, where do humans come from, and all. There are many misconceptions associated with this theme, that people often say that you must have heard this a lot, that humans came from monkeys. Have you heard this loose statement somewhere?
Yes, sir.
Humans evolved from monkeys. Let me tell you, that never happened. It's not true. We have not evolved from monkeys. If that was true, why are monkeys still there? And if that was true, maybe 1,000 years from now, all monkeys should become human, but that will never happen. Monkeys and humans and chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans, they are all different species. But what evolution says is not a linear relationship between these species, but a branching descent. So what is proof and what is science is that humans, chimpanzees, orangutans, they might have, they had a common ancestor back in time when humans were not humans. And to understand this thing, it was just a pre-cap. You have to pay attention to all the proofs that we have for evolution and how to believe in it in the right manner. And I'm giving you a free pass to all of you. Please question. Do not believe anything in any chapter for that matter, but do not believe anything in evolution unless you are convinced. Okay, I'll try my level best to convince you with proofs and scientific evidences from the NCERT or even from outside the NCERT. But till you are not convinced, you will not let me move ahead. Everyone promises that? Aisha, Iram, Mariam, and Rabia. So this is one thing I'm very, very particular about, that my students understand the true essence of evolution and do not just read and remember some lines from somewhere loosely said that, humans came from monkeys and we had a tail in the past, which, is not of use anymore, things like that. Okay. Anyways, so let's start it on Wednesday. And yes, be curious and please ask. Do not believe unless you are satisfied with evidences. That will be the theme in evolution. So I'll see you all in the next class. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.